There's a moment not many people know about. On the second floor of the HYBE building in Seoul, after the cameras had been turned off and the staff had started leaving the room, one person remained. Still standing in front of the large mirror that covered an entire wall. Still running through the same movement, again and again and again. That person was ParkJimin, and when his fellow BTS members watched him do it, there was nothing they could do but stand there in quiet admiration. Welcome back. If you've been part of the ARMY for any length of time, you already know one thing that has stayed completely consistent about Jimin across more than a decade of his career. He never feels like he's good enough. Not because he lacks talent. Not because he doesn't work hard. Quite the opposite. Jimin is someone who works harder than almost anyone precisely because he believes there is always more room to grow. And no moment has ever made that clearer than the preparation period for the Arirang World Tour, the largest concert tour BTS has ever undertaken in their history. Today we're talking about what actually happened behind the scenes. About the practice process that left his bandmates speechless. About the sacrifices that never made it onto any camera. And about why every single hour of that invisible work paid off in front of more than 110,000 people at Tokyo Dome. To understand just how significant Jimin's preparation for the Arirang tour really was, we need to go back to where it all started. Jimin was the last member to join BTS before their debut. His background wasn't in vocals, it was in contemporary dance. He admitted this himself in a Rolling Stone interview in 2021, saying that when BTS debuted, he felt he wasn't fully ready and wasn't confident. Let that sit for a moment. The same person who is today recognized by his own bandmates as having the widest vocal range in BTS once stood at a point of deep uncertainty about his own abilities. V has said outright that Jimin's range is vastly superior to the other members. But Jimin has never been comfortable sitting on that recognition. That's exactly what keeps him running. In a Rolling Stone interview from February 2026, just weeks before the Arirang album was released, Jimin was asked whether he considers himself a perfectionist. His answer revealed something profound about his character. He said he wasn't sure he could call himself a perfectionist, but that letting go of the desire to do things well felt to him like wanting to quit altogether. So he didn't know if he'd ever be able to let go of that desire. That's not just an interview answer. That is the complete map of how Jimin approaches every single thing he does professionally. And that map has never been more visible than in how he prepared himself for the Arirang World Tour. Let's go back to October 2025. BTS had just finished completing their mandatory military service, one by one. Jungkook was the last to finish, and when all 7 of them were finally able to gather again in the HYBE practice room, it was a moment the world had been waiting for. RM posted a mirror selfie on his Instagram stories from inside the practice room, and in the background of that photo, Jimin was visible sitting on the floor, hand on his head. A simple photo that made the entire global fandom feel like it had briefly stopped breathing. But for Jimin, that reunion wasn't a moment to relax. For him, it was the signal that the real work was beginning. In a live session with other members toward the end of 2025, Jimin and RM talked about their early practice sessions together. Jimin revealed that they started by revisiting old choreography to warm up, since the new choreography for the Arirang album hadn't been fully finalized yet. The way he described that process reflects something very specific about his mentality. He doesn't wait for everything to be ready before he starts working hard. He begins with whatever is available. One thing that needs to be understood about this preparation period is just how complex the challenge was for every member of BTS, including Jimin. They weren't just coming back from a typical hiatus. They were returning after nearly 4 years without a single group performance. 4 years is an extraordinary amount of time in the world of live performance. Muscle memory fades. The group coordination that once felt completely natural has to be rebuilt from zero. And the pressure surrounding all of that wasn't small pressure. It was the weight of expectations from millions of ARMY around the world who had been waiting for an incredibly long time. V openly admitted to media that he had trained several times harder than usual because he was worried his skills had grown rusty during that extended break. If V, known for his natural talent, felt that kind of pressure, imagine what it was like for Jimin, who has never once compromised on the standards he holds for himself. December 2025 became a defining month. All 7 BTS members were photographed together in the practice room, with V taking a mirror selfie that went viral worldwide. That wasn't a staged promotional photo. It was genuine documentation of work in progress. And fans who paid close attention to detail noticed something. Behind the smiles and the laughter visible in that image, there was a subtle but real exhaustion on their faces. Not the kind of exhaustion that's sad. The kind that's honorable, the exhaustion of people who are building something extraordinary. Jimin himself posted a selfie from the practice room on March 15, 2026, just days before the Arirang album was released. The photo immediately drew attention, not just because Jimin looked striking with his long blonde hair, but because of something more significant. The sharper definition in his facial lines, which to longtime fans meant one thing: Jimin was in full work mode. People who have followed Jimin for years know that changes like that are a visible marker of the intense hours he was putting in. And in the message accompanying that photo, he wrote to ARMY that the album release was only a few days away, that he was very nervous, but that he hoped to show them his best. Nervous. Jimin used that word. Someone who has been doing this for over a decade. Someone whose solo single Like Crazy made him the first Korean solo artist to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, still felt nervous before a comeback. And for anyone who truly understands Jimin, that's not a weakness. That's proof that he still cares, deeply and completely, about every single thing he puts in front of the world. Then came Bloomberg. In an exclusive report published alongside the release of the Arirang album in March 2026, Bloomberg journalists were given rare access to the second floor of the HYB building where BTS was rehearsing for their comeback live. What they witnessed gave an extraordinarily vivid picture of what the group's practice dynamic actually looks like. All 7 members were present. A handheld camera followed them. A boom mic swayed overhead. Around a dozen people monitored the rehearsal. Access to that floor was so restricted that even senior HYB executives had difficulty getting in and out. One moment captured by Bloomberg speaks volumes about the mentality of this group. After running through Aliens, a track from the new Arirang album, they shifted to Butter, the massive 2021 hit they once performed at the Grammy Awards. Under J-Hope's direction, who was clapping out a sharp tempo, the group stumbled through the choreography. After several failed attempts, they ran over to a laptop in the corner of the room to watch footage from an old performance. But what Bloomberg didn't capture in specific detail, what only those who have followed Jimin closely for years would understand, is what happened after the official rehearsal sessions ended. This is a pattern that BTS's inner circle has come to know well. When others started resting, Jimin was still there. When others were stretching out and getting ready to head home, Jimin was still running through the sections he felt weren't right yet. In that same Rolling Stone interview from February 2026, Jimin revealed something critically important about his creative process in the Arirang album. He talked about how his solo work had taught him not to be afraid of creating songs, that he had tried to approach the group album work without fear, asking questions constantly, and continuing to try new things. He also described his involvement in writing They Don't Know About Us and Into the Sun from the Arirang album. This wasn't just about dancing and singing. Jimin was going deeper into the creative process than he ever had before, and that added an entirely new layer to everything he was preparing. There's one more element that made Jimin's preparation for the Arirang tour unlike anything he had done before. For the first time in BTS history, this tour uses a 360-degree stage format, with no designated front-facing section. Every audience member surrounds the stage. That means the performers have to be fully active in all directions, at every single moment. There's no safe corner to retreat to. No moment where a performer can afford even a second of letting their guard down because they think the cameras or the crowd are looking the other way. For Jimin, the spirit of that challenge wasn't actually unfamiliar. He has always danced and performed as if everyone is watching him from every angle, even when the format doesn't demand it. But technically, the 360-degree setup required a massive adaptation in choreography, in stage blocking, and how to build genuine connection with an audience spread all the way around them. And every one of those adaptations had to be practiced until it felt completely natural. Jimin spoke directly about this to media before the tour began. He said they had put a lot more work into the visuals this time, so that audiences could enjoy the show with their eyes as well. He explained that many of their past performances had been so centered on choreography that it made diverse staging approaches difficult. But for the Arirang tour, they consciously pushed themselves into new creative territory. That statement reads lightly when you skim it, But for anyone who understands how many invisible hours are contained in words like "put a lot more work in," that sentence is a summary of hundreds of additional practice hours that were never caught on any camera. Then came a moment that became a talking point across the entire ARMY community. Back in October 2025, before the official comeback, Jimin posted a seemingly simple Instagram photo of himself cleaning graffiti off the practice room mirror. What made that moment extraordinary was J-Hope's response in the comments. He jokingly told Jimin to speed things up because they needed to use the practice room right now. That comment went viral instantly, but its meaning runs deeper than just humor between two close friends. It painted a completely accurate picture of the daily reality at HYBE. A packed rehearsal schedule, a practice room that had become the busiest space in the entire building, and 7 people all competing to give absolutely everything before the biggest tour of their lives. BTS launched the Arirang World Tour on April 9, 2026, at Goyang Stadium in South Korea. 3 consecutive nights. Then they moved to Tokyo Dome for 2 nights on April 17th and 18th, 2026. Those 2 nights brought in over 110,000 attendees combined, making this BTS's largest Japan performance since 2019, a full 7 years after their last appearance there. At Tokyo Dome, Jimin's performances became a widespread topic of discussion, not only because of their sheer quality, but also because of the context surrounding them. Before the tour began, a brief clip from a rehearsal session had circulated online and triggered a controversy on social media. In that clip, a loud backing track was audible, and in one moment, Jimin's voice could be heard even when the microphone wasn't fully aimed at his mouth. A group of people quickly jumped to a conclusion. They accused Jimin of lip-syncing. But ARMY members who understand how live production actually works immediately responded. They explained that rehearsal sessions almost always use backing tracks to check sound balance and stage levels. That judging a performer from a rehearsal clip is fundamentally unfair and inaccurate. And most importantly, that Jimin's track record across more than a decade speaks infinitely louder than a few seconds of footage taken completely out of context. And then Tokyo Dome arrived, and Jimin stepped onto that stage. And every single one of those questions was answered in a way that required absolutely no words. At the end of the first night's performance, Jimin did something that wasn't widely discussed but that perfectly captures who he truly is. He didn't just perform. He had prepared a written message to deliver to the Japanese audience in Japanese. Not spontaneously, not improvised. He wrote it out in advance, making sure every word was right, making sure the feelings he wanted to express would land exactly as intended. He told the crowd that it had been a long time since his last visit and that he was deeply grateful to be back. He added that he would work harder to show them more and more beautiful stages. Would work harder, even after everything he had already done. After all those hours of rehearsal. After a performance that made 110,000 people completely unable to look away. Jimin still chose those particular words. That is Jimin. That is what leaves his bandmates in awe. Not because he is the world's greatest performer, though many would argue that case, but because there is not a single point in his life as an artist where he has decided that he is already good enough. Every time he achieves something extraordinary, the first thing he does is look for which part of it can still be improved. Hamish Hamilton, the world-renowned director behind multiple Super Bowl halftime shows who worked with BTS on their comeback live at Gwanghwamun Square, reflected on what the group had done to his perception of artists. He said that what struck him most wasn't their talent, but the way they worked. They listen. They ask questions. They contribute ideas. They tease each other and laugh together. They are clearly 7 friends who happen to be among the most famous people on earth. In that context, Jimin isn't an exception. He is the brightest example of exactly what Hamilton described. Someone who shows up to every single rehearsal session with an open mind and an unwavering determination. Someone who can joke around with Jungkook during a break and then immediately return to the mirror to run the choreography again until it's exactly right. But perhaps what is most powerful about Jimin's entire Arirang tour preparation is something he said in that Rolling Stone interview about how his solo career had shifted his perspective on BTS. He said his thinking hadn't changed. BTS, and performing well as part of BTS, remained his highest priority. But if there was any change at all, it was that he now also wanted to become a better singer as an individual. Because his teammates are all so amazing, and he feels the need to improve his own value as a member so he doesn't get left behind. Not left behind. Not become the best. Not outshine anyone. Don't get left behind. That's how Jimin sees himself within BTS even after all of his extraordinary solo achievements. After like crazy at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. After ruling the Billboard global charts for 2 consecutive weeks. After becoming one of only 2 BTS members to ever top all 3 of those major Billboard charts simultaneously. Jimin is still sitting on the practice room floor, watching old performance footage, taking notes on what still needs to get better. The Arirang World Tour has only just begun its long journey. More than 85 concerts, 34 cities, 23 countries, continuing all the way into 2027. And Jimin will be on every single one of those stages, carrying with him all the invisible hours of practice, all the sacrifice that never made it onto any camera, all the dedication that began long before the very first stage light ever turned on. That's what you're actually watching when you see Jimin perform. Not just a gifted performer, but someone who has chosen, day after day, to be better than he was the day before. And no amount of stage lighting, no size of stadium, no number of fans in the seats can change that choice. Because for Jimin, the stage isn't the destination. The stage is the opportunity to prove that every single hour spent in that practice room was worth it. And every time he stands there, under the brightest possible spotlight, he carries with him every version of himself that ever felt like he wasn't quite good enough, and transforms all of that doubt into something genuinely beautiful to witness. That is Jimin, and that is exactly why his bandmates cannot help but be in awe of him. If this video resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest BTS content. And let us know in the comments, which Jimin moment has most shown you just how deeply dedicated he is as a performer. We'd love to read what you think.